In this video guide, we will talk about two complementary language constellations that can be used in intercultural telecollaboration exchanges, namely Tandem and Lingua Franca.
How can we support intercultural contact and communication in the school context? Traditional options include school trips abroad or school exchange programs. In the TeCoLa project, we set up intercultural exchanges with the help of telecollaboration tools and environments. We support, for instance, video communication on the Big Blue Button platform, communicative avatar interaction in the TeCoLa virtual world, or written and oral posts on digital walls and Padlet. Another issue that needs to be considered concerns the choice of one's students' communication partners. The commonly preferred option is to put them in contact with native speakers of the respective target language. This would then be a tandem exchange. But why not have them communicate with other non-native speakers in their common target language? This is what we call a pedagogical lingua franca exchange.
Let us now take a closer look at Tandem and Lingua Franca exchanges with regard to two important characteristics: the type of pedagogical language constellation and speaker roles. In a Tandem exchange, each of the two collaborating school classes speaks the other's target language as a native language. An example would be a class of French students learning Spanish, collaborating with a class of Spanish students learning French. Regarding speaker roles, the interacting students switch between the two languages, either within or between sessions. That is, they change from being a native speaker expert to being a learner and back. In a pedagogical lingua franca exchange, the collaborating school classes speak different native languages while sharing the same target language. An example would be a Dutch and a German class, both having English as their target language. In this case, the interacting students communicate with other non-native speakers of different lingua-cultural backgrounds while using their common target language, which in our example would be English. Their lingua franca interaction is pedagogically mediated by teacher interventions and self-reflection. This makes it different from lingua franca exchanges in everyday communication.
The speaker roles in tandem exchanges deserve closer attention. There are two clearly distinct roles each student performs. While they are learners of their non-native target language, they act as lingua cultural experts in their native language. In their learner role, students profit from being able to communicate with native speakers, whom they can also ask for lingua cultural support. In their native speaker expert role, students provide a lingua cultural role model and act as a kind of teaching assistant. As communication partners, it is also essential that they accommodate their native speaker performance to the proficiency level of their non-native exchange partners. In a tandem constellation, the pedagogical preference is for a more or less strict orientation towards native speaker norms and conventions.
From a traditional foreign language teaching perspective, with its more or less strict native speaker orientation, pedagogical lingua franca exchanges might not be perceived as the right approach. In the light of an intercultural communication perspective, however, they appear to be closer to the requirements of communicative interaction in real life. They create rich opportunities for authentic intercultural communication and learning, and they require the interacting partners to collaborate and negotiate a shared intercultural common ground. Being in the same boat with other learners, the students tend to feel more relaxed and at ease. A pedagogical lingua franca exchange requires and enables students to further develop their intercultural communication skills and attitudes. This includes in particular noticing and exploring cognitive, emotional and behavioral differences, acquiring strategies of accommodation, meaning negotiation and let it pass, developing empathy, tolerance for ambiguity and behavioral flexibility. The pedagogical preference is for an open orientation towards the language taught with sufficient room for its creative appropriation for one's own communicative and communal purposes. This encourages students to explore and trust their own non-native speaker intuition and to develop a natural sense of communicative speaker satisfaction and self-confidence.
As we have seen, those language constellations, Tandem and Lingua Franca, offer valuable opportunities for authentic communication. When deciding which constellation to adopt, pedagogical needs and preferences are of course of key importance. You should, however, also consider the practical and organizational issues involved. For a tandem constellation, it may not be easy to find a partner class that meets the language criterion, because only students who have your student's target language as a native language could be potential partners. In addition to profit from the exchange, they need to be learners of your student's native language. It is much easier to find a partner class for a pedagogical lingua franca constellation. The only criterion for your partner class is to share your students' target language, regardless of their country or lingua cultural background. In addition, in a tandem constellation, the students switch between roles and languages. As native speaker experts, they use their native language. The time available for target language immersion may thus be considerably reduced. In a lingua franca constellation, by contrast, students do not switch languages. Throughout the exchange, the students from both partner classes communicate in their target language.